Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt like someone else had already taken control of it, without saying much? Without raising their voice? Without even trying? Maybe you've been in a conversation where someone twisted your words, subtly. Almost like it was a game. Or they made you doubt yourself, not with anger. Not with volume, but with calm, measured confidence. And you stood there, wondering, how did they do that? Why can't I hold that kind of power? Let me tell you something that might sting a little. It's not luck, it's not charisma, it's strategy. Most people don't lose power because they're not smart, they lose it because they react too quickly, they speak when they should listen, they reveal too much too soon, and before they realize it, they've already given away the one thing they thought they were protecting: their position. We live in a world that rewards loud voices, fast talkers, and quick responses. But real influence, the kind that doesn't scream for attention, that kind is rare. And powerful. And it's quiet. Let me ask you this. Have you ever regretted how fast you replied to an insult? Have you ever tried to prove a point, only to realize later that you looked defensive, not strong? That's what happens when we act out of impulse instead of principle. And the truth is, the world trains us to react. Social media wants us to speak now, not think. Modern life pushes us to be everywhere, do everything, respond instantly, or we fear we'll be forgotten. But all of that noise? It's what makes most people predictable. And what's predictable is easily controlled. But what if you chose a different path, a path that doesn't depend on being loud, aggressive, or constantly available? What if you mastered a quieter kind of power, built on discipline, clarity, and self-command? That's where Stoic philosophy comes in. Not as some dusty idea from ancient Rome, but as a living strategy for modern power. Because the truth is, the person who controls themselves controls the room. The person who doesn't flinch when challenged doesn't need to fight, and the one who can stay centered while everyone else unravels, that person becomes unshakable. In this video, I'm going to share with you 6 principles of unshakable power, based on timeless Stoic wisdom. But let me be clear, these are not tricks. They're not about manipulation. They're not about controlling others. They're about controlling you. They're about becoming the kind of person who doesn't just survive in chaos, but shapes it. And I know, right now, you might be thinking, is this really possible? Can I truly change how others perceive me, without being someone I'm not? The answer is yes, but it requires something that few are willing to develop: restraint, patience, self-mastery. We're going to talk about how to stay emotionally still when others lose their cool, how to use silence, not as awkwardness, but as strength, how to be strategically misunderstood, so people underestimate you, and you win without announcing it, how to make your absence more powerful than your presence, how to influence people not by controlling them, but by mirroring them until they follow you voluntarily, and finally, how to walk away from anything that doesn't align with your values, without fear, without drama, and without regret. This isn't for everyone, because if you're looking for fast shortcuts or viral tricks to look powerful, this won't help. But if you want to become powerful, inwardly, unshakably, authentically, then keep watching. Because these 6 Stoic principles don't just change how others see you, they change how you see yourself. And once you master that inner shift, you won't need to shout, you won't need to chase, you won't need to prove. You'll become the presence in the room that cannot be ignored. So, let's begin. Rule 1. Master emotional stillness. Let me ask you something personal. When was the last time someone said something that got under your skin, and before you knew it, you were already snapping back? Maybe it was a sarcastic remark, a challenge to your integrity, or just a tone of voice that rubbed you the wrong way. You didn't think, you reacted, and maybe afterward, you regretted it. That moment, right there, is where most people lose their power. You see, most people believe emotions are truth. That if you feel anger, it must be justified. If you feel insulted, then someone must have wronged you. But here's the reality. The Stoics knew this centuries ago, and neuroscience confirms it today. Emotions are not facts. They're just impressions, fleeting sparks, biological signals, and the man who confuses emotional impulses with truth will always be manipulated. Think about it. If someone can provoke you, make you flinch, raise your voice, or lose control, they don't need to beat you, you've already defeated yourself. That's why the first rule of power is emotional stillness, not emotional suppression. Not pretending to feel nothing, but choosing when, where, and how to express it. On your terms, not theirs. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone insults you in front of others. They try to poke at your ego. Maybe question your value. Mock your effort. Most people? They'll fire back. Try to defend themselves. They'll raise their voice. Explain. Argue. Maybe even insult in return. But what just happened? They stepped into the other person's frame. They let someone else decide the rules of the game. They traded their position for emotion. Now imagine the opposite. You hear the insult. You pause, you breathe, and instead of reacting, you look at them calmly. Maybe you smile. Maybe you say nothing. Maybe you walk away. The silence lingers. They expected chaos. And they got composure. And that silence, that restraint, it unsettles people more than 100 loud words ever could, because it tells them one thing: you are in control. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers and a Roman emperor, reminded himself daily: you have power over your mind, not outside events. He didn't just say it to sound wise. He said it to stay sane while ruling an empire, because even at the top, people will test you. They'll insult you, misunderstand you, disagree with you, question your choices, and if you react every time someone provokes you, they own you. That's why emotional stillness is not weakness. It's discipline, and discipline is the highest form of strength. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to fight every battle. You don't need to win every argument. Because the moment you do, you're no longer acting from values, you're reacting from ego, and ego is predictable. What's predictable is vulnerable, and what's vulnerable is easy to defeat. So here's the shift. Don't let people bait you into emotional responses. Let them chase your silence. Instead, let them get nervous when they can't read you. Let them burn out trying to break your calm, while you remain unmoved. Because when you remain calm under pressure, you don't just control the moment, you control the environment. And here's the truth most people won't tell you. Calmness is intimidating. It's powerful. It shows depth, self-possession, clarity in a world addicted to instant reactions. Calm is rare, and what's rare is respected. So next time someone tries to provoke you, ask yourself, is this worthy of a reaction? Or is this a test of my discipline? Most storms don't deserve a response. Sometimes the strongest move is no move at all. That's how a Stoic wins, not by dominating others, but by never letting others dominate his mind. So hold your ground, protect your inner stillness like it's your greatest weapon, because it is. Rule 2. Let silence lead. Let's talk about silence. Most people are terrified of it. You've probably felt it yourself. That awkward tension in a conversation when no one speaks. Someone cracks a joke. Someone fills the space with small talk. Because in our world, silence feels like a void, and most people rush to fill it. But what if I told you that silence isn't weakness, it's not absence, it's power? Real power doesn't need to shout, it doesn't need to prove itself, it doesn't scramble to be heard. Silence, when used with intent, is one of the most underrated, misunderstood, and effective tools of influence you will ever possess. Let me show you how. Imagine a negotiation. One side is talking, trying to convince, to dominate, to win. They lay out facts, pressure you, flood the air with their words. And you say nothing. You wait, you hold, you watch. And something incredible happens. They get uncomfortable. They start guessing what you're thinking. They begin revealing more, because the silence is too loud to bear, and in their attempt to escape it, they show their cards. You haven't said a word, but you've already shifted the balance of power. That's what silence does. It makes people uncomfortable enough to reveal more than they planned, not because you forced them, but because they couldn't sit still in the calm you created. Silence isn't passive. It's pressure. It's like a blade kept sheathed, not because it's dull, but because it's sharp. There's a story from Roman history that illustrates this perfectly. A Roman general was once in a war council where everyone was arguing about their next move. Voices were rising, opinions clashing. Everyone wanted to be heard. The general? He said nothing. He listened, he watched, he waited. Then, when the room had exhausted itself, he finally spoke. Just one sentence, and it changed everything. That one line silenced the debate, aligned the team, and shifted the direction of the campaign. That's not just leadership, that's strategy, and it started with silence. See, in a world addicted to noise, stillness becomes magnetic when you're quiet, not out of fear, but out of control. People notice, they lean in, they start wondering, what's he thinking? Why isn't she reacting? What does this mean? And in that uncertainty, you gain the upper hand. Stoic philosophy teaches us this exact idea. The Stoics weren't mute, they were measured. They believed that every word had weight, every word had a cost, and if something costs you, it better be worth spending. So ask yourself, do you speak because you have something meaningful to say or because you're afraid of being forgotten? Because the truth is, when you're always talking, you become ordinary, predictable, replaceable. But when you speak less and observe more, your voice becomes rare, and what's rare is valuable. That's the law of scarcity at work. The less you say, the more people listen when you do. In interviews, for example, a thoughtful pause before answering a question makes you seem confident, not confused. In meetings, a moment of silence after a point signals certainty, not uncertainty. And in personal conversations, not reacting immediately shows emotional strength, not detachment. It takes discipline to hold silence, but it takes even more courage to own it. It means you're not desperate to be understood, you're not trying to control the narrative, you're confident enough to let people wonder. And when people start wondering what you're thinking, they assign meaning to your silence, they project depth, they assume wisdom. Even if you're just enjoying the moment. This is why the Stoic doesn't rush to respond, he listens, he watches, he reflects. And when he speaks, it's deliberate, clear, precise, because every silence before the word gives that word more impact. So how do you use this in your life? In negotiation, let the other person speak first. Then wait, let them fill the air, and reveal what matters most to them. In conflict, don't match volume with volume. Match noise with calm. You'll unsettle your opponent without saying a thing. In leadership, don't dominate meetings. Be present, be measured, and when you speak, let it matter. Because here's the reality, if you need to be loud to be respected, you were never respected in the first place. But if people lean in when you speak, if they wait for your opinion, if your words feel like decisions instead of noise, you've already won. So don't fear the pause, don't rush to fill the silence, train yourself to be still in rooms that crave sound. And when you do speak, speak like it was chosen, like every word was a blade, unsheathed at just the right moment. That's how you let silence lead. Rule 3. Be strategically misunderstood. Here's a truth most people never learn. Being misunderstood, on purpose, can be one of your greatest advantages. Now, I know that sounds strange. In a world obsessed with being seen, being clear, and being understood, the idea of letting people get you wrong on purpose might feel counterintuitive. But that's exactly what makes it so powerful. Let me explain. We've been trained, almost since childhood, to clarify ourselves constantly, to explain our intentions, to prove our value, to correct every misperception. But what if you didn't? What if you let them underestimate you, let them assume, let them believe you're slower, softer, less prepared? Here's why that works. People are most careless when they think they've already won. The moment someone thinks they've figured you out, they lower their guard, they talk more freely. They show off, they overlook you, and in doing so, they expose themselves. You don't have to deceive them. You simply don't correct them. It's not manipulation. It's discipline, the discipline to stay unreadable, the strength to not need validation, the strategy to let someone walk into their own overconfidence, while you wait, watch, and prepare. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Meaning, don't match energy. Don't mirror their aggression. Don't play the same game, play your own. Quietly, intelligently, intentionally. Let me give you an example. Picture a man sitting silently in a meeting. He listens. He takes notes. He nods occasionally. Others assume he has nothing to say, that he's just along for the ride. But then, near the end, when the room is noisy, uncertain, chaotic, he speaks, clearly, concisely, and the entire dynamic shifts. Why? Because no one saw it coming. His power wasn't in dominating the conversation. It was in timing. He allowed himself to be misunderstood, and then used that misunderstanding as leverage. That's what strategic misinterpretation is all about. Most people play life in straight lines. What they say is what they feel is what they show, and while there's honesty in that, there's also vulnerability. Because what's fully visible is fully targetable. But when you choose what to reveal and what to withhold, you gain control over the frame. You define what people focus on. You create space for them to project, and in that projection, they reveal themselves. This is especially effective in high-stakes settings, negotiations, confrontations, politics, Even relationships, if someone assumes you're not a threat. They stop preparing for your strength if they think you don't understand. They over-explain if they think you're emotionally invested. They think they've won. And while they're busy celebrating, you're observing, not reacting, not defending, just collecting data. This strategy doesn't mean you're fake, it means you're focused. You know when to show your hand, and when to fold your arms. It's like a master chess player giving up a pawn, so they can corner the king 3 moves later. And here's the beautiful irony: when you're misunderstood, people think they're in control, they relax, they open up, and then, when the time is right, you act clearly, precisely, powerfully. It's not about ego, it's not about trickery, it's about playing the long game. Because the Stoic doesn't need to impress, he doesn't need applause or affirmation, he's not here to be seen. He's here to succeed. So the next time someone questions your silence, doubts your strength, or assumes you're out of your depth, let them. Let them draw their own conclusions, let them feel superior, let them relax. And when the moment comes, strike with clarity, move with confidence, and shift the entire conversation, without raising your voice. That's the power of being strategically misunderstood. Because when people can't read you, they can't control you. And in a world full of people trying to broadcast their value, the rarest, and most dangerous person in the room is the one who doesn't need to. Rule 4. Turn absence into strength. Let me share a paradox with you. The more often something is seen, the less it's valued. The more available you are, the less others respect your time. The more you speak, the less weight your words carry. We live in a world that's obsessed with presence. Show up everywhere. Be always online. Be reachable. Be visible. Be active. But here's the quiet truth. What is constant becomes ordinary, and what is scarce becomes powerful. So if you want to be respected, if you want to build real power, you need to understand the strength of strategic absence. Let's pause here and think honestly. Are you always replying right away, always saying yes, always showing up, even when your energy says no? If so, ask yourself, what message are you sending? You're telling the world, my time isn't sacred. My attention is for sale. I'm always available. And people respond accordingly. They cancel on you, they delay, they overstep, because you've trained them to believe there's no cost. But when you become selective with your time, your words, your presence, people shift. Suddenly, they prepare before speaking to you, they choose their words more carefully, they don't take your attention for granted, because they've learned it must be earned. This is the law of scarcity in action, and it's not about playing games, it's about reclaiming your value. Think about it in a business meeting. Who do people listen to more? The person who talks endlessly or the one who speaks rarely? But when they do, everyone stops and listens? That's not charisma, that's timing, that's presence, that's the result of not diluting your voice by using it constantly. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because stepping back often looks like weakness to the noisy world. Not showing up everywhere might be misinterpreted as being out of touch. Letting people wonder where you are makes them uncomfortable. But discomfort breeds respect, and distance creates desire. We've been told that we need to show up constantly to be relevant, but the opposite is often true. Let me give you an example. There's a colleague at work. He doesn't jump into every conversation, he doesn't rush to respond to every email, but when he does speak, everyone listens. His words feel heavier. His presence feels earned. Why? Because he's not scattered, he's measured, and because of that, people respect his time and his voice. This is the effect of strategic scarcity. And it goes beyond the workplace. In your personal life, too. When you're always available, always responding, always saying yes, people stop appreciating the gift of your presence. But when you step back, not with bitterness, but with clarity, they begin to realize your value. They begin to notice your absence, and that absence speaks volumes. You don't have to explain where you went, you don't have to justify not responding right away. You simply disappear with dignity and reappear with purpose. That's not withdrawal, that's discipline. And it teaches the world that your life is governed by priorities, not pressure. Here's the truth most people won't tell you. When you stop showing up for everything, you start showing up more powerfully for what matters. Because you've protected your energy, you've guarded your time, you've refused to be consumed by things that don't align with your higher self. In elite circles, this is how power is preserved. Think of closed-door meetings, private memberships, and spoken rules. Their very scarcity is what makes them so respected. The same principle applies to you. You don't need to tell the world your every move. You don't need to post every moment online. You don't need to be reachable at all hours. In fact, disappearing can be one of the most powerful things you do. It sends a message without saying a word. My time is valuable. My energy is mine. My presence is earned. And when you come back with clarity, with purpose. Let your return feel like an event, not a routine. Let others rush to be seen. Let them exhaust themselves trying to stay relevant. You stay rare, stay measured, and when you move with intent. Because the man who is always seen becomes easy to ignore, but the man who chooses when and where to appear becomes unforgettable. So remember, you don't need to be present everywhere. You just need to be remembered by the right ones. Let your absence build intrigue. Let your silence demand attention, and let your presence be felt, not by frequency, but by weight. Rule 5. Lead quietly through reflection. What if I told you that some of the most powerful leaders in history never needed to raise their voice? They didn't command attention by force. They didn't intimidate by dominance. Instead, they led through something far more subtle: presence. See, we've been conditioned to believe that leadership means control, that we must dominate conversations, win debates, push our ideas forward. But real power, real influence, it doesn't shout, it guides, it mirrors, it creates such calm alignment with others that they follow you, without even realizing why. This is the power of reflective leadership, of mirroring, deliberately, consciously, and with quiet strength. So, what is mirroring? It's not manipulation, it's not mimicry, it's not faking agreement. Mirroring is a form of deep observation. You notice how someone speaks, their tone, their pace, their energy, and then, gently, naturally, you match it. Just enough for them to feel understood. Why does that matter? Because everyone wants to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel safe. When people sense that you get them, not just with words, but with presence, they soften, they let their guard down, and in that moment, you build trust. Let me give you an example. You're in a heated discussion. Someone's frustrated, maybe even angry. You feel the tension rising. Most people, they push back, they match intensity with intensity, fire with fire. But you breathe, you acknowledge their emotion, not with words, but with energy for a moment. You meet them where they are, and then, you slow your voice, you lower your tone, you create calm within yourself, and without even realizing it, they begin to match you. That's not magic, that's leadership. You didn't overpower them, you guided them, through stillness, through reflection, through emotional presence. The Stoics understood this well. They didn't believe in dominating others, they believed in mastering themselves, so deeply, so consistently, that others naturally followed. They knew that people don't remember every word you say, they remember how you made them feel. And that feeling of being seen, heard, understood, that's what creates lasting influence. Here's the twist. When you lead through reflection, people think the change was their idea, and that's exactly what makes it stick. You didn't convince them, you didn't argue them into submission, you walked beside them until they were ready to walk with you. That's real persuasion, not pressure, presence. And this works in every area of life. In business, when you enter a room with calm, grounded energy, people adjust, they speak slower, they think clearer, they listen better. In relationships, when you stop trying to win, and instead mirror, people feel safe, they open up, they trust, and that trust becomes the foundation for real connection. In leadership, when you reflect the values, tone, and rhythm of your team, not to blend in, but to guide forward, you create momentum without needing to force it. It's not about being agreeable, it's about building emotional alignment first, so you can influence without resistance later. Because let's face it, no one likes being told what to do, but everyone wants to feel understood. So what does this look like in action? You match their energy at first, but slowly bring it toward your pace. You reflect their language, then introduce your own ideas with ease. You hold silence when they rush, letting them feel seen in their own urgency. And when they follow your tone, your calm, your rhythm, you lead them out of the chaos. All without raising your voice, all without declaring your authority, all without needing to win the room. Because when people feel emotionally safe around you, they invite your leadership, they welcome your direction, they want you to take the lead, because you made them feel human first. That's influence, that's power, that's Stoic presence. It's not about performing, it's about being so centered, so observant, and so grounded, that your calm becomes contagious. And here's the truth that will change the way you see influence forever. You don't lead by being the loudest, you lead by being the stillest. So next time you walk into a conversation, don't rush to be heard, observe, reflect, align, and when the moment is right, guide. Because when you lead quietly through reflection, you don't chase control, you become the rhythm others follow. Rule 6. Walk away with clarity. Let me ask you something. How many times have you stayed longer than you should in a conversation that drained you, in a job that no longer aligned, in a relationship where your presence was tolerated, not respected? You didn't stay because it was right, you stayed because you were afraid to leave. We all did. We confuse attachment with loyalty. We tell ourselves that maybe it'll get better, but deep down, we know the moment passed, the purpose ended, the path changed, but we stayed because we didn't want to walk away. Here's the truth. Real power isn't shown in how long you endure, it's shown in your ability to walk away with clarity. Not out of anger, not out of drama, not to prove a point, but because something no longer aligns with your values, your peace, your direction. Most people stay because they feel trapped, because they fear what comes next. They think walking away means giving up, but it doesn't. It means you're strong enough to choose yourself. Think of the most grounded people you've ever met. They don't argue when disrespected, they don't beg to be heard, they don't stay to prove they're right. They just leave, calmly, quietly, and that silence, that absence, it echoes louder than anything they could have said. That's not weakness, that's clarity. Because a Stoic doesn't cling to what's fading, he doesn't make decisions from emotion, he acts from principle. He knows this. Every time you stay somewhere that dishonors your values, you're negotiating your self-respect. And what's worse, you're teaching people how to treat you. When you stay where you're not valued, people stop valuing you. But when they see that you can walk away at any time, without a scene, without needing permission, everything shifts. Your presence becomes rare, your time becomes sacred, your words become meaningful. Because they know, you don't need to be there, you choose to be. Let me give you an example. Imagine a heated argument, voices rising, accusations flying, but one person doesn't argue back, they don't shout, they don't defend, they simply stand up and walk away. The room falls silent, everyone watches, and in that silence, they feel the power that just left. That's what Stoic power looks like. It's not about control over others, it's about control over yourself. You don't have to match energy, you don't need to explain yourself to people who aren't listening, you don't owe your peace to environments that refuse to protect it. Walking away is not a retreat, it's a declaration. It says, I've already chosen who I am, I don't need to fight to prove it. I don't stay out of fear, I move because I know what I'm walking toward. And when you walk away like that, not with anger, but with clarity, people remember. They remember that they couldn't shake you, they remember the silence you left behind, and often, they begin to question themselves. That's the echo of dignity. So the next time you find yourself clinging to something that drains you, ask yourself, am I staying out of strength or out of fear? Because if it's fear, it's time to leave. Not with resentment, not with a speech, just go and let the absence speak for itself. This doesn't mean you walk away from challenges, it means you walk away from places where growth is no longer possible. You walk away from environments that demand your compromise instead of celebrating your contribution. You walk away from people who mistake your consistency for convenience. And when you do that, something powerful happens inside you. You reclaim your energy, you protect your future, you preserve your identity. Because when you no longer fear losing what doesn't serve you, you become unshakable. So remember this, you don't need to prove your strength by staying. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away and never look back.